The temptation of Jesus. Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And after fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. And the tempter came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread." But he answered, "It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God."
Well, good morning to Dwelling Chapel, where we just take a little time to let the word of Christ dwell more richly in us. I love this time, and thanks for joining us. Again, don't forget afterwards to go out to the patio and write those notes to donors. Grab a donut and then stick the donut inside the envelope. You're going to have to smush it and then send it off. So. Oh, no, you can eat the donut. Okay, I was unclear on that. So it's Faith and Tech Week, and the theme for this week has been the power of choice. And it seemed natural to go to this passage of the temptations of Jesus because Satan was offering Jesus choices about powers. And that's what technologies are, right? Technologies are powers. Marshall McLuhan, if you saw Dana Joya on Wednesday night, Marshall McLuhan, Joya reminded us, said that any technology or anything that is called a technology is something that extends my natural human abilities. So my glasses extend my ability to see. That's a technology. A car extends my ability to walk. That's a technology. My phone, all phones, extended my ability to speak. That's a technology. And so always with the power of choice, always with power, we say it's not bad, but the question is, how do we use it? And especially the question for Jesus was, as Satan was tempting him with his powers, the question for Jesus was, is this a power I can do with God in this case, or apart from him? Is it a power that is moving me toward him or away from him? And the question for Jesus was, would he do it without God or with God? When we are in the wilderness, these temptations increase because in the wilderness we feel relatively powerless. This is the place of vulnerability, insecurity, and fear. If you were to go outside the walls of the ancient Near Eastern city, you were vulnerable, as the parable of the Good Samaritan shows us. So the wilderness increases the question of what powers can I use to rescue myself? Because it is those places where we feel actually more empty, more insecure, more anxious. Well, there aren't a lot of wilderness places these days if you live in Southern California. It's pretty much all walled city from end to end. So the question becomes, what might be the modern definition of wilderness? Well, maybe any place without that. And we laugh, but maybe that's true. If we don't have that, we feel a little isolated, a little insecure, maybe a little empty, maybe like we don't have power. And so the modern wilderness may be one that is created when we find that there's a place without connection. Do you get FOMO? Yeah. The fear of missing out. I didn't make this up. Google FOMO. Not now. FOMO is becoming a term for the feeling one gets when they don't have bars. Digital bars. That's a different kind of wilderness for some people. When we experience FOMO, we experience that we may be forgotten or unaffirmed or powerless or uninvolved or lonely. And so our technologies that connect us seem to be now mandatory for us to stave off the feeling of FOMO. Because at any given time, I might be gripped by this modern wilderness feeling. So here are some symptoms of FOMO. Some of us may get an anxious feeling that we're missing out. If we're apart from our phone, if it goes dead, if it's broken, or even if we just choose to lay it aside for a while. Some of us may feel an empty feeling if we're left just to ourselves. Even though God is always already there, increasingly it is hard to feel that if we're used to the feeling of connection through our devices. A panicky tinge when your phone goes dead. Some of you may experience that. An anxiety about disappointing others if I don't respond to their posts. A compulsion to post in order to feel like you exist in the minds of others. Feeling dissed or hurt if your friends don't comment on your posts. And generally a restless insecurity apart from the bars. So my question for you, and that's kind of what we do this morning, we ask ourselves and God questions. Is FOMO my wilderness? Is that my wilderness experience? Is that the 21st century wilderness experience? That suddenly without my devices, I'm gripped by anxiety, emptiness, panic, compulsion, hurt, and restlessness. I imagine that's true of all of us, it's true of me in varying degrees. And so we pick up our devices in an effort to soothe ourselves, in an effort to gain the power to nurture ourselves, to turn stone into bread for ourselves, to turn something that might be nurturing and to try and make it nurturing for ourselves in the wilderness of FOMO. The question is, will we do that with God or do that apart from God? Is this a power that moves us toward Him or away from Him? He who says, I am the bread of life. He who says, don't try and turn your stones into bread. And so, the wilderness, which is a temptation, always comes with an opportunity. All temptations are also invitations. So while the wilderness may be a place of emptiness, insecurity, and fear, or any place without the bars, it also, in ancient literature, in the scriptures, and still today, can be, on the contrary, a place of encounter and divine help. I was in a doctor's office not too long ago. I could tell they were running late. No magazines looked good. Naturally, I picked up my phone because there was that feeling of emptiness, impatience, lack of productivity. And then I said, wait, there might be a judicious use of this phone. Maybe there are people that I could genuinely talk to and that would be a good thing. But in a doctor's office, that's a little awkward and it's just didn't seem appropriate to be talking on the phone with others right around. And so I just started praying for the people in the office. I wonder what that person's here for. I wonder what they're feeling. I wonder who's waiting for test results. Lord, you are present here. You are here even in this office. If you were made of steel or wood, I could touch you. But you're made of spirit, so you can be all places at all times. Lord, what am I feeling right now? Why am I here? Do I have any anxieties? Lord, give me peace, give me rest, give me you. Because I don't want to do anything apart from you. I don't want to try to turn stones into bread. You are the bread of life. So instead of worrying about FOMO, maybe we should worry more about FOME. The fear of missing Yahweh.
Matthew 4, 5-7. Then the devil took him to the holy city and set him on the pinnacle of the temple and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, He will command his angels concerning you, and on their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone." Jesus said to him, "Again, it is written, You shall not put the Lord your God to the test."
Well, we're talking today about normal human temptations that are part of our everyday life and how these can maybe show up in our use of technology. And here we find in this second temptation that Satan questions Jesus' very identity. If you are the Son of God. Just before being driven into the wilderness, Jesus had been baptized. He'd been affirmed by God the Father through the Spirit coming on him as a dove to all who were there that he was indeed the Son of God and that God was well pleased with him. Satan's question here was aimed at bringing up doubt about Jesus' very identity. And the temptation was to prove himself in this wonder-working display of fame and glory, to jump off the highest point of the temple and be saved from bodily harm by angels. This would surely prove to himself and to all who might see in the crowded temple area who he really was. It was a temptation to doubt what God had already declared to be true. You are my son. And to show to the world that he was connected in high places, to find his significance in the world, to manage his own image. But here we see that Jesus knows who his Father is, and he responds with conviction of his relationship to his Father God. It is written, you shall not put the Lord your God to the test. Even after 40 days in the wilderness, fasting and alone, he would not test God. His Father was trustworthy. His Father's words were true, and Jesus' identity was secure. He would not give in to managing his image to prove to himself and to the world who he was. I don't know about you, but it's very easy for me to question who I am, to be in a wilderness of uncertainty, to doubt what God thinks and feels about me. It is easy to question my identity in Christ. Am I really so loved? Am I really his daughter? Has he really removed my sins from me as far as the east is from the west? This shows itself in myriad small ways in my daily life, as I try to justify myself or my actions or my decisions to other people. I find that I seek to prove my significance to myself and others in the things that I'm doing, the things that I produce, so that I can prove to myself and to them that I'm worthy of respect. And in the world of technology, this idea of showing who I really am to the world is such a strong temptation. Doreen Dodge-McGee on Wednesday talked about this as the performance art of social media. We sometimes say and do things differently on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram than we would in real life, and I do the same thing. In my desire to prove my significance, I find myself thinking really hard, perhaps paying too much attention to what cover photo I put on Facebook. Do I project myself as in the know and artsy with that Instagrammed photo I took at that well-known foodie restaurant? Or thoughtful and wise through that rather melancholy picture of the ocean? Or friendly and joyful in that group shot of me with all of my closest friends? And what about my status updates? What joyful, energetic things do I choose to say and what do I avoid saying to project a certain image to hundreds of my closest friends? And if I had a clout account, how would it increase my clout score? But what about you? How have you used technology, or maybe your friends, to show the world who you really are? What image do you find yourself trying to project? And then this temptation is also an invitation to consider who in your life can you really be around? And so we'd like to invite you now to either think about these questions on your own for the next few minutes, or share with a partner. Go ahead and talk to each other about these things. Brainstorm together. How do you find yourself doing these things? And if you do have a Twitter account, feel free to post your thoughts. So I'll give you about 4 minutes to do that.
Let us continue to let the word of Christ dwell richly in us. Matthew 4, 8-11. Again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to him, "All these I will give you, if you will fall down and worship me." Then Jesus said to him, "Begone, Satan, for it is written, 'You shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve.'"
Well, I've been asked myself this week to think through my own experience of technology. And one of the things that I have realized, and I don't know if you've experienced this as well, it's a little overwhelming. I mean, this problem potentially is so ingrained in our characters and in our culture. Our relational patterns are being altered by the habitual use of repetitive technology. What we've been challenged with this week is that our brains are changing. Things like the way we relate to one another. Our brains are changing, and it's so deep in us. Lisa talked about it. You guys just talked about it. I, too, am guilty of projecting a self on Facebook that is not my actual self. I didn't just choose any profile picture. I chose a picture in which I thought it actually looked pretty good. And I thought my wife looked pretty good, and it was awesome because we were in Paris together. That is probably one of the best days of my life. And of all the days of my life, I put that one to represent me out there. I am tempted also to think that I am truly the person that I am projecting in that digital realm. So I'm tempted towards the false self with it, but I'm also tempted to allow my use of technology to alter the way I relate with others. At every turn, technology has made it simpler to initiate connection with people. Now, it's not a deep connection, but there's less complexity sort of wading into the relational realm. I now have categories for things that I didn't have categories for just 10 years ago. What used to be the complexity of face-to-face interaction has now been divided up. Well, could that be a text message? Yeah, that's a text message. Well, I probably should call this person, or maybe I'll just leave a voicemail. Well, this is an email, but that's a Facebook message. We have these ways of categorizing messaging and getting in touch with people, and it all used to be face-to-face. Each of these streamlines the messiness and the unpredictability of human interaction. I can now text an acquaintance. And why is it preferred to do that? Because talking on the phone can be so cumbersome. I don't always know what to say. And so texting becomes an easier way to exchange relationship. I have extracted the information I need, but it is stripped clean of nearly all the relational ties, which in this fast-paced world, those relational ties can be a liability. And so Jesus was on a world-saving mission. That's messy work. The redemption of people is messy, messy work. As Todd mentioned, he had just received his marching orders from his father on the occasion of his baptism, and he's quickly drawn into the wilderness. It's a time of preparation. He is God incarnate. He is Emmanuel. He is with us. God didn't just text Jesus. He didn't just message us. He insisted on meeting us face to face in all the complexity and all the messiness. He's charged with the messy task of inviting human beings to experience himself as an intimate friend. Humans have been given the ability to relate with one another, to be relational. But in sin, that relational ability has become enslavement to various attachments. And Jesus' task is to offer attachment to himself and to have that attachment be the redemptive work, the healing alternative to attachment to the world. And so when Satan offers Jesus all the kingdoms of the world, he's offering a much easier, tidy solution to the problem. You mean I can just skip over all that hard stuff and they can just be mine? Satan's offer is that Jesus would be known widely, but not known intimately, which is exactly what our technology offers us. It would be known widely, but not intimately. Satan's offering Jesus a shortcut, a way that is decidedly less messy, less involved, and less complex. And in contrast to Satan's offer, intimacy takes time. It is complex. It requires rejection at times. It demands struggle, and in Jesus' case, it led to death. But in the end, the possibility of intimacy. Satan offered Jesus less pain, but the cost was actual intimacy, authentic relational connection. And so in the challenge of this week, what we have been confronted with is that our technology is training us to trade authentic relational connection for the streamlined efficiency of technology. This week has invited us to confront the pattern and to re-examine the way of Jesus in our culture. You have taken time to consider the people you can be yourself in front of. You've considered your closest friends. These are the people who you can have the greatest joy with. But these are also the people who can bring you the deepest pain. Relationships are messy and complex. Jesus' relational approach is not the most efficient way to accomplish his redemptive tasks. But then efficiency is not a relational virtue. And yet we are tempted to the value of the relationships that can be had efficiently and quickly. And Jesus is inviting us into the slow complexity of human experience through human interaction. So as you have considered your use of technology this week, and as you are being invited into the complexity of human experience, is there a relationship that you sense the Spirit is calling you to relate to more deeply? Have you been tempted to avoid the difficulty of the human experience with a person? And do you sense that God is inviting you to something deeper? Is there a way that you can care for somebody and you're feeling called away from relating to them through technology? Take just a moment in prayer before God. Speak honestly.
We hope you enjoyed this message. Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Learn more at biola.edu.